Hi, I'm so excited to be here. So today we're going to be talking about courageous creativity, which is what happens when you combine imagination with integrity and show up with your whole self and bring all that you are into the work that you do. But before we do that, I want to open this imaginary door right here and welcome you into my office. My office is lovingly called the Peach Pit because of the warm, womb-like environment, the peach-colored walls, and the fact that I'm a child of the 90s and I love 90210. And about once a month, I invite people from throughout my company, Refinery29, into the Peach Pit to brainstorm. And anyone can sign up to join the brainstorm, so we have everyone from people in editorial to people in engineering come into the Peach Pit. And we have rosé, we eat peach-flavored candies, we share ideas, and we work through challenges. And a key feature of the Peach Pit is this lovingly bedazzled buzzer, which is our no limitations buzzer. So, if you talk about budget, you're going to get buzzed. If you talk about timeline, you're going to get buzzed. And that's not because we live in some fantasy la-la land where we don't have budgets or timelines or goals that we need to hit. It's because in the Peach Pit, I have people from all different backgrounds, some of whom might not think of themselves as creative, and I want to create an environment where ideas can come and shine. And we start every Peach Pit out the same way, and I'm going to ask you all to join me in this activity. So you're going to have to put your things down. If you're able to stand, please stand. If not, you can improvise, and just make a little space for yourself. And what we're going to do is a shakeout. So we're going to start with our right leg, then right arm, left leg, then left arm, and we're counting down from 4, and we're very loudly calling out the numbers. So it's going to be kind of like 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then this side, and then we count down, okay? And don't worry about getting it right. It's not about perfection. It's about getting our yayas out. Okay, are we ready? Okay, let's do it. Okay. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 4, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay. How do you feel? So why do we shake it out in the Peach Pit? We shake it out because play creates trust. We shake it out to level the playing field. You know, people are coming in and they might see me as the boss and they don't, they might not feel comfortable, so I want to show them that I'm just as silly as they are, they're just as silly as I am, so we have a level playing field. And we shake it out to get out of our heads and into our bodies. I don't know what stressful meeting someone's coming in from, what they have in their head. And I just want to create an environment and a moment that helps us get out of our heads and into the present moment. So I brought you into the Peach Pit today because for me it embodies 3 key tenets of courageous creativity. The first, be the most you. When you bring your unique personality to the table, when you show up as your whole self, you can transform a boring brainstorm into a Peach Pit. The second, friction creates sparks. As fun as it is with the peach-flavored candies and the shakeout, we tackle tough issues in the Peach Pit. And, I think that when you can go into uncomfortable territory, basically these amazing things can happen. And the third is create the conditions for creativity. It's so important to recognize that creativity can be so elusive, and you need to create the conditions for yourself and for other people so it shines. So now that we've shaken it out together, I figure I might as well introduce myself. Hi, I'm Piera. I grew up in a small town in Maine. This is the bump-in town square of my 1,000-person town. Friday nights were pretty lit. I grew up with an entrepreneur dad. We did business brainstorms around the dining room table at dinner. And a social worker mom who was a fierce feminist and someone who was deeply connected to her community. As you can see, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. That's me and my brother. Needless to say, we all love dressing up in costume. And growing up, my window to another world was Sassy magazine, which was this incredible teen magazine that gave me this window into a world of young women creating fun, empowering content that showed me that weird was cool and really helped boost my confidence and give me this vision of New York and where I wanted to be with my life. And this was my girl gang growing up. This was me at my junior prom wearing one of my favorite outfits at the time. I think I would still wear this now, a blue wig, a blue sequin dress, and knee-high go-go boots. And after I graduated high school, I moved to New York to go to art school, and I really just fell so deeply in love with this city. It represented to me and continues to represent to me just so much in my life. And when I graduated college, I partnered together with 3 friends and we started Refinery29. And it started about this big. It started with this map of 29 different stores in New York that we felt really had this incredible creative voice to them and that had super unique communities of style around them. And when we started Refinery, the media landscape for women looked something like this. It was about 14 years ago that we started the company. And so much of what we saw in the media was, a lot of articles about how to get Beachbody ready, how to please your man, and just so much that reinforced this idea that to be beautiful was to be tall, thin, white, and young. And to me, that didn't represent, the world that I saw around me, the beauty of New York. It didn't represent what I grew up to aspire to be. And, we really wanted to show women in all of their complexity, diversity, individuality, and strength. We wanted to create for a new generation of women and create content on our own terms. So this is who we create content for and the content that we create.
I'm 16 years old and I'm a professional motorcycle racer.
I am a cosmic sparkle kid who wants to live inside of a rainbow of love.
I want to inspire girls. Just believe in yourself.
We will be heard and we will be seen.
Not just trendy, it's not just a movement, it's literally life.
I think now is the time. I love what I do.
Be brave, be strong, have fun, and do it because you love it.
No Miami, but you can feel the heat. Tell them I'm a date, this is underneath. Bums and trap when I hit the street. Me talkie when it's on the downbeat. Talkie when it's on the downbeat. Who that says none. Cold, no ice, girls came from the slum. Tell that boy say it might mean don't yell that when I get strapped. Run. Talkie when it's on the downbeat. Down.
Huzzah. Thank you. So at Refinery29, we want to be a catalyst for women to feel, see, and claim their power. And, I think that when I was starting out and, as a girl from Maine who went to art school and started this small company that grew, I don't know that I ever really saw a picture of leadership that looked like me. And so for so long, I thought that I couldn't do what it was that I wanted to do. And I think, being the most you is really about bringing your values into the work that you do, But sometimes you get to a point where you think that who you are isn't enough. And I had that moment as we were building our company. We got to this point where I felt super comfortable in my role as a creative. I went to art school. I felt, I loved making content. I loved storytelling. But I felt extremely uncomfortable in my role as an executive. And I remember I would go into these meetings, and we had hired a lot of different people who came from a more corporate background than I had, and I would sit in these meetings, and it was sort of like, if you've ever seen Charlie Brown, that adult voice, like womp, 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 like all these people that were speaking all this jargon, and I felt like a kid at the adults table. And it was this pivotal moment where I started to truly believe that I might not be the right person to bring my company forward. I felt like I didn't have the experience. I hadn't gone to school for this. No one had taught me this. I was waiting for someone to hand me a roadmap to my career, and no roadmap existed. And I really thought that I might give up. But then I had this soul searching, and I thought, well, that's bullshit. I built this company, I built this city. I can't just walk away. I need to figure out how to get through this challenge. And I realized that I could bring my strengths into the areas that were uncomfortable to me. And so what I started to do was I said, you know what, I'm going to bring my curiosity into these meetings. And so while I had just been sitting there for a long time just thinking like, oh my God, I'm so dumb, I don't know anything, like everyone sees that I'm a phony, I started to go in and just start asking questions like, what does that acronym mean? What do you mean when you say that? Can you describe that? And just asking simple questions. And I really thought that people were going to see right through me and see me as a fake. And instead what happened was that when I asked questions, people started to lean in to listen to the answer. And after the meeting, people would come up to me and they would say, oh my God, that was such a great question. Thank you so much. I had no idea what that person was saying. And instead of eroding my leadership and making everyone think that everyone think that I was a phony, what actually happened is that I grew my leadership, and I also grew my understanding of what people were saying. I grew my confidence in what I was doing, and I just realized that sometimes being the most you isn't about it doesn't mean you have to change. If something isn't comfortable to you, that you don't have to do it. It's just that sometimes you can bring your strengths into areas that are uncomfortable. Another good example of that was negotiation. I started getting into this point where I needed to negotiate in a lot of different ways, and I was terrified. I thought the negotiation looked something like this. Pick up the phone, fuck you, it's my way or the highway. Slam down the phone. End of conversation. Obviously that's extreme, but I thought you had to be super uncompromising and just like a total asshole to negotiate. And that's not who I am. But again, I had to, I knew that I had to develop this skill, and so I thought, what do I have that I can bring into negotiation that will make it authentic to me? And so I realized that I could bring vision into negotiation. I could paint a picture and describe this world that the other person wanted to live in. And then once I had them nodding along like, ooh, I want to live in that world, then I could just be collaborative and describe the situation as it is and say, look, I have X, you want Y, like let's talk through it. How can we get to a solution? And then I realized I could bring in creativity. Once I listened to them and heard really what was at the root of what they wanted, I could come up with some creative solutions and place them on the table. And all of a sudden what I saw was that not only did I feel 10,000 times more comfortable in negotiation, but I actually was doing so well that our chief financial officer commended me for my negotiation skills. So being the most you is really so much about staying true to your values. I think when we were creating Refinery, we didn't see what we wanted to in the media landscape. And I think that courageous creativity means, if you don't see it, create it. And stay true to your values as you're doing it. Also, if something doesn't fit, you can tailor it to fit you better. You can bring your strengths into areas that are uncomfortable, like a security blanket, and transform those skills into something that really does feel like you. And also remember, you're never done growing. Being the most you is about taking those strengths and growing into new areas and tackling the uncomfortable. So another challenge that I had as we were growing our business was that we started to go from producing, some like 20 articles a day to doing hundreds of articles a day. And people were telling me that creativity was a bottleneck. And I was so frustrated by it at the time. I felt like they just didn't really understand the importance of creativity in our brand and the vision that I had. And basically what was happening was they felt like creativity was a bottleneck. So all of a sudden people were going rogue. The sales team was hiring their own designer to do a deck, hiring their cousin or whatever. And the editorial team, and growth teams were starting to pull all this stock photography because they wanted to move quickly, and it just didn't make sense to do a custom design or photo shoot for everything. And what was happening was that our site just didn't look like us anymore. It started to just look extremely homogenous and just lacked the imagination, the inclusivity, the individuality that I wanted to see in our content, and I wanted to see, our content representing our audience. And so I went out to drinks with a friend one night, and I was so frustrated, and I was telling her, they're saying creativity is a bottleneck, but we need to control the brand. We need to keep the brand tight. And she was like, dude, take a breath. And she said, isn't it interesting that they're telling you that creativity is a bottleneck, and you are mimicking their words with your words and your statements, and you're basically showing them a bottleneck with what you're saying and the physical motions that you are creating. That was a really revelatory moment to me. I was like, oh my God, you're so right. And so I started to think about what other analogies and what other motions can I make to shift people's mindset. And I thought that I was just gonna Jedi mind trick them. I was like, okay, creativity is the guardrails on the highway, and you can drive as fast as you want, but you're not gonna drive off the road. So I started saying that, and I just thought I was gonna trick them into doing what I wanted. But actually what happened was that I came to a new solution. I started to, in shifting the words that I used and the way that I thought about it, I came across a new solution. And I realized that there were things in our process that really weren't working and that were creating a bottleneck. And so one thing was, this was the type of stock photography that was on our site at the time. People were pulling from the stock photography world. This was back in 2012, and the stock photography world was a lot of white women laughing into salad bowls. And this didn't represent our diverse audience. It didn't represent, the creativity of our brand. And so one night after that conversation with a friend, I went home and I all of a sudden had this light bulb moment where I thought, you know what, why don't we create our own stock archive? Why don't we make anti-stock photography? And so we started doing that. It started with just shooting, our own staffers. I remember I would look over and one of our photo interns would have a bunch of colorful tampons and a seamless and was shooting it in the corner of the office. But we started to create our own images, and that very scrappy starter effort ended up being what is now tens of thousands of images that we've created to really represent the audience and the brand that we want to put out into the world. And after we did that, we heard from our audience that they could really recognize our images in a lineup. So it created this total brand recognition in the industry. And then we said, you know what, why should we only change the way that we look and we represent women? Why don't we do it in the wider industry? And so we partnered with Getty. We created this collection called No Apologies, because we don't think women should have to apologize for who they are or what they look like. And now any brand or publisher can use these images in their content. Another day that was full of a lot of friction for many people was the day after the election. I remember I woke up and I felt so heavy. I wanted to put on black and crawl into a hole and certainly not go to work. But a lot of where I derive courage from is in my role as a leader. And I knew that on that day, more than really any other day, I needed to show up and be there for my team. And so I put on a pink power suit and I went into the office to just try and be a beacon of hope for people, and decided to sort of work with the energy that was there. And we did a kind of creative healing session. We watched the news, and then we got together and I had people shred the things that they were afraid of, the things that they were upset about, and then we had a big brainstorm and we said, how are we going to turn this pain into action? How are we going to help our audience through this tough time? And we had a lot of different ideas that turned into content, but one of the things we were talking about is the power of art and creativity to catalyze change, to start conversations. And so one of the things that we talked about was doing that, which then led to a few weeks later deciding to work with 30 different artists to create artwork about the issues that they cared about for and why they were marching in the Women's March. And I think a traditional leader might say that politics have no place in the office. But in this day, it was just following intuition, and I knew that this was the right thing for us to do. And this artwork that we created with artists ended up being all across social media. People were sharing it, everyone from, Hillary Clinton to all kinds of celebrities, but everyday people as well, talking about why they were marching. And we saw these signs be marched with everywhere from Paris to Salt Lake City to Kosovo. And then that momentum translated to really an approach that we started taking to how we talk about important moments for our audience. So whether it's extending Pride beyond the summer, or March for Our Lives, or all these different moments, we now work with artists to bring them to life. And I think, when we first decided to we went down to the Women's March with 2 buses full of employees, and, we really got behind this content, and we weren't sure how it was going to play out. I think we all know now what a historic moment was, but at the time we thought, is this going to scare away our advertisers? Is this going to put our business at risk? And we decided to do it anyway. And I think the interesting thing that we saw was that it actually brought brands to us. So a lot of the efforts that we created ended up bringing brands, towards us because they want to take a stand, but they don't know how. And so one of the things that it led to was actually partnering with Unilever on their Unstereotype Alliance, where they're trying to strip stereotypes out of all of their advertising, and they came to us to create this unstereotyped flag that they could fly to really represent the initiative. So friction creates sparks. I think it's so important to combat frustration with imagination. I think all the time about the difference in my body and the difference in my mind when I feel like a bottleneck versus I feel like the lanes of the highway. So I think that's such an important thing. And I think sometimes when you change your language, when you reframe the problem, it helps you to unlock the solution. And the last one is to embrace the uncomfortable. It's our human nature to try and run when we feel uncomfortable, but I think that when you can create the conditions to really go into an uncomfortable situation and talk about it and work through it and actually use it as creative fodder, amazing things can happen. So last year, one of our creative directors came into my office, and she wanted to brainstorm about something that she was working on. And so I said, come on in. She sat down and she briefed me on what she was working on. I started brainstorming. I was like, oh my God, we could do this. We could, what if we partnered with this person and did this? And I just had all these ideas flying out of my brain. And I thought she was gonna be really grateful because I was being so helpful. But instead, when I looked at her face, she looked totally downtrodden, and she actually looked like she was gonna cry. And I said, Stella, what's going on? Are you okay? And she said, well, you have all these ideas, and that's great, but when I had to brainstorm this, I didn't have any ideas, and sometimes I wonder if I'm creative enough for this job. Oh, I felt for her so much in that moment. Who here has had a moment where you fell short of your own expectations and then spiraled into imposter syndrome? So many times. And so I asked her, I said, Stella, tell me, what were the conditions of your brainstorm? What was going on when you had to come up with these ideas? And she said, well, our West Coast salesperson called me up and said, I need these ideas by the end of the day. What do you got? I said, okay, that's not really a surprise. So basically, someone put a gun to your head, said, give me all your ideas, and your mind went blank. And I said, Stella, I've learned that it's so important that when I need to brainstorm, especially if I have a time constraint or a budgetary constraint, or I just need to get these ideas done on the fly, that it's just critical to create the conditions for my creativity. And for me, those conditions mean, sometimes it's doing wordplay, opening a magazine and looking at words and kind of just like loosening my mind by making word connections. Sometimes it's opening, a mood board and looking at a lot of images and seeing sort of where my mind goes. And my office is full of images because it helps me to kind of come up with ideas on the fly. And I said, but the number one condition for my creativity is bringing someone into the room that I feel comfortable with, that I can laugh with, and routinely that person is you, Stella. So it's really no wonder that in the conditions that you were in, you didn't have a lot of ideas, but in these conditions, the ideas are flying out of my brain. And I think that's such an important thing to think about. I think so often we beat ourselves up over that moment of deficit, and we just get depleted and we go into imposter syndrome. But what if we do the opposite? What if instead that moment, those days that you just are full of ideas, that you are just like on fire, that you're completely in flow, what about tracing those back? Follow the breadcrumb trail back from the successes so that you can actually learn what those conditions are that can help set you up for success in the future. Another condition that I learned in my first job at a magazine was that basically we would have these amazing brainstorms. We were in this small office where everyone was really close, and the brainstorms would always get like so silly. And I started to see this pattern emerge again and again and again. Someone would say something super ridiculous, we would all bust out into fits of laughter, and then boom, brilliance. Again and again and again. And this is the type of thing that we would have been brainstorming. This was a shoot that we did with balloon people modeling the season's hottest accessories. And so someone would yell out, "Big Papa," and we would, and someone else would say, "The heiress," and we would all start laughing, and then boom, inflated egos. And we'd be like, oh, that's good. And I think anyone that was a fly on the wall of our brainstorms would have thought that we were completely fucking around, wasting time, and, but when actually this was the stuff of genius. And I think so often we feel as adults that we don't have the permission to play, we don't have the permission to laugh in the workplace. And I think that all of those things actually are such incredible fuel. They're de-stressors, they open our minds up, and they create incredible creative results. So creating the conditions for creativity is all about knowing what works for you, the fact that laughter unlocks brilliance, and that creativity is a renewable resource. You know, I think as creatives, we often feel like, oh my God, that idea was our last idea, but it isn't. Creativity is a renewable resource, and it keeps growing and growing and growing. I just realized I'm out of time, so I'm gonna go really fast through the last part of the section. So I brought you in one of my favorite places, and now I will bring you out in another one of my favorite places that I've created, 29 Rooms. So 29 Rooms is Refinery29's immersive funhouse of style, culture, and creativity. And we started 29 Rooms by being the most us. We did a brainstorm and thought about all of the attributes of our brand that we wanted to bring together. It was our 10-year anniversary, and we thought, how do we bring this digital brand to life in a physical space? So we threw out all the different ideas, and then we came up with this idea. We said, what if we drew back from that original map that I showed you at the beginning and actually created a space with 29 different creative voices coming to life in a warehouse, with each room representing a different topic in our content. And so we went to our executive team and we pitched this idea of 29 rooms. We brought a beautiful mood board, and we were so excited, and we were met with initial excitement, and then people started asking questions. They said, well, this looks extremely ambitious. How are we going to fund it? They said, this looks beautiful, but it looks like MoMA. How are we going to have the artistic credibility to bring this to life? And they said, this looks like, you know, a huge space. We're a digital company. How are we going to get people through the doors? How are we going to get people to come during Fashion Week? And then someone said, I don't know, maybe we should have a cocktail party instead. Oh, it's like, no. But at this point, I know friction creates sparks, so I said, great feedback, we'll come back to you. And so we went back to the drawing board, we came back and we said, okay, we're gonna have 29 rooms, and 6 of them will be brought to life by creative brands that want to showcase their brands in a completely different way. Artistic credibility, well, Refinery29 is all about elevating the voices of creatives, so we're going to bring the most interesting cultural players to life to bring these rooms to life. And how are we going to get people there? We're going to use the megaphone of social media. We're going to create the most beautiful, inspiring space that is a backdrop for people to create their content, is a stage for creation. And we got the green light, we created 29 rooms, and we saw this huge, incredible turnout where 1 in 2 people on Instagram saw this event, and we had lines around the block. And one of the most rewarding things about creating 29 rooms, which is now one of the fastest growing parts of our business, we did it in 4 different cities this year, is that people came and they said that the event made them want to start dreaming bigger, that it made them feel more creative. Because that's the thing about courageous creativity. When you are courageously creative, it creates more courageous creativity in the world. Courageous creativity is contagious. So you are courageous, you are creative, now go out there and spread that shit. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, I have to tell you something so wild. So tomorrow at 9 a.m., I am starting a new job as a mom. I know, pretty wild. And my own girl boss is entering the world at 9 a.m. tomorrow. So wish me luck. Mwah.